Greetings to everybody. First of all, I would like to briefly present myself. I'm KUNDID, and I'm Associate Professor at the Faculty of Economics, Business and Tourism, University of Split, at the Department of Finance. And today I'm grateful for this opportunity of sharing with you my experience in lecturing and teaching the SDGs related topics in the financial courses. So if you think about standard syllabi of financial courses, we might think that there is no sufficient place and time and space for the SDG related topics, but throughout some practical examples of courses, I'm going to show how I managed to involve more of the SDGs in the standard financial course. Also, I have to say that this presentation is not going to be about pedagogical aspect of teaching the SDGs, but more about the content. So which topics can be implemented and involved in the standard finance courses. So the aim of this presentation is actually to summarize a number of SDG related issues, which might, for example, enrich your course in the field of finance. And of course, I'm going to share my experience about having some SDG related seminars with students and how do they respond to them. So first course that I teach is banking, and it is a very basic course. So it actually leaves me sufficient space for some changes and moderations. And for all courses that I'm going to mention and present, you have on their links complete syllabi with all the content of certain lectures, as well as the literature and students' responsibilities. So the course of the banking is actually taught on the undergraduate level, and it is a very basic course. It is, of course, the optional course, but students like taking it because it is very practical and it can be connected to their everyday situations and, for example, one day with some business practice. So SDG related topics, which are usually hidden behind some lecture titles in the syllabi, are listed here. So on the first hours, I'm talking about traditional banking business models, and I usually mention the social responsibility of banking as a complement to some mainstream banking business models. When we are discussing the financing of some needs of public importance, I'm also emphasizing the role of development banking. In the area of central banking, we have this macro-financial topic about price stability as a component of sustainable development. So it is a very actual topic because we are living in inflation and probably hyperinflation period. So to my students, I normally deliver the lecture in the following way. Of course, I present what is inflation, how we can measure inflation, what are the sources of inflation, and finally, what are some advices how to combat and cope successfully with inflation. So inflation is, of course, something which is diminishing the power of our money and the quality of our life and our possible consumption. So it is definitely connected with the concept of sustainable development, as potentially we are going to, in the future, having less financial resources than today and less resources that we can buy with that money. So I think that it is important to connect inflation with sustainable development always. From the microfinancial topics, you can see here a list of topics that usually students take for their seminars. So these are topics connected to financial inclusion, importance of financial literacy, some tips how to manage personal finance in a better way to increase your saving potential and decrease over-indebtedness possibilities. And of course, we are talking about microfinancing, consumer protection, and all the aspects which are connected somehow with the personal well-being and social inclusion. In the future, in the next year, I plan to deliver a lecture about political role of banks, so especially emphasizing their role in promoting and, of course, being in compliance with the sanctions against the war and invasion. And of course, I plan to talk more about digital banking and financial services, and their importance for the financial inclusion, and of course connected with the over-indebtedness about personal bankruptcy. On the also undergraduate level of study, I teach financial markets course. So this is some, of course, basic course, and as we are talking throughout the financial markets about deficit, I'm connecting the topic about deficit with personal over-indebtedness and its determinants. When we are talking about regulation, I'm providing my students with examples of fraud and manipulation, and of course providing them with some advices how to protect themselves in these circumstances, how to know to recognize what is a fraud and what is manipulation. And finally, when we are talking about some requirements for the companies for being listed on some stock exchanges, I also deliver a lecture about sustainable investment and sustainability stock market indices. In the future, I plan to emphasize more financial therapy aspects. So what are the usual behavioral biases in our behavior? How do we know our level of risk, and is our level of risk actually corresponding to our financial knowledge? How to prevent compulsive buying and materialism attitudes. So actually all aspects which are sometimes part of the term financial therapy. As I have, of course, lectures which are dedicated to bonds, I plan to spend more times on green bonds type. On the current years of study, I have specialized courses like bank management. So actually bank management is all about managing financial risks, and it leaves me with more space and time for SDGs related topics. But I pay attention throughout this course to the ethical banking, to the long-term effects of compensation payments of bank managers and their connection with the financial crisis. We discuss some best and maybe some less good practices of corporate social responsibility by banks. So actually how to report corporate social responsibility by banks and how to choose which stakeholders are we going to be more oriented in our CSR policy. And finally, when talking about deposits, I'm talking about the role of banks in preventing money laundering. Theory of financial intermediation is on the economics program. So actually, SDGs related topics can be somehow always implemented because it is a theoretical course and every topic can be broadened somehow with the SDGs. And here you can see some list of the topics. Of course, development and ethical banking are present. When I'm talking about financial regulation, I'm talking about regulatory trap and libertarian paternalism. Regulatory trap can actually diminish the role of governmental institution, while libertarian paternalism can increase it. From the financial innovation, students usually take the seminar in the area of reverse mortgage, which is a way of financial inclusion of retired population, and climate finance. Considering the financial stability topic, we always talk about some predatory financing. So our example here is the Swiss franc mortgage loans crisis in Croatia. And finally, usually some of these troublesome financial concepts, we are connected with the systemic risk accumulation, as well as some exogenous factor like climate catastrophic occurrence or some other exogenous aspects, how they actually can be a trigger of the systemic risk materialization. Investment banking is also a very specialized course on the graduate level of study. It is all about the IPOs, the underwriting, financial advisory. So there is no, again, so much time for the SDGs related topic, but one of them which I'm always delivering is about investment banking capitalism and their actual responsibility for raising social inequalities. As you can see, on some very basic courses, I usually include SDGs related topics, whether in a form of strict lectures or give my students some micro financial aspects of these SDGs in a form of seminar. On a higher view study, SDGs are including mainly throughout some financial innovations or governmental actions. So actually, I would say that on the lower years of study on undergraduate level, there is probably more opportunity for including the SDGs, and of course on the theoretical courses. If you have very specialized courses, which is about calculations, about risks, there is not so much space for the SDGs, but it can also be done at some very beginning or ending of the course. Finally, I would like to say that most of these topics tackle the aspects of social inclusion, financing the role of reducing or increasing inequalities, and of course environmental aspects throughout some topics such as green finance, social responsible, ethical, and development banking. So they are in line with the SDGs. As on the higher years of study, there is not so much time and space for the SDG related topics because the courses are specialized, as I already mentioned. I usually encourage my students to take their final thesis in the area of SDGs in finance, and this is our success. So actually some of the students were so good that together with me, they actually published a scientific paper in a peer-reviewed journal, and most of these topics were actually in the field of reverse mortgage, financial literacy, corporate social responsibility of banks, reporting, banks, CSR, and financial inclusion. And some of the other works which were not published or in progress are connected with estimating demand for ethical banking services, financial literacy, including consumption, the role of development banks in the SDGs, sustainability indices and macroeconomic trends, and so on. So I'm very pleased that I could deliver this presentation. If you would have any additional questions, please contact me on the following email, and thank you for your attention.